Introduction. Here, my goal is to present the flow of the argument for why the technological system is leading to the total destruction of complex life on Earth and why we have to destroy it completely. Also, I will briefly summarize rules for a movement that would want to accomplish such a world-transforming goal, as well as some strategic guidelines. This is a summary of Anti-Tech Revolution, Why and How by Ted Kaczynski. The why. The first part of the book tries to answer the question, why are we approaching the destruction of life on Earth? So what is it in the nature of societies and technology that makes the doom almost inevitable? Why should we destroy the technological society? We can't control the development of a society. Looking at history, we can find many instances where people tried to predict how events would unfold in the future. For example, predicting the changes in economy. What we see is that it is a rule that such predictions are useless at best or even harmful. Good intentions may lead to disastrous consequences. Whenever we try to correct some wrong in the society, we are driven by good intentions, but they often backfire, leading to much worse outcomes. For example, prohibition in the United States was supposed to decrease alcohol consumption. The result was the formation of gangs and mafia that got wealthy from selling illegally produced strong alcohol. Complex systems are systems of interconnected elements. They behave in a nonlinear fashion, that is, an increase in some parameter, for example temperature, may lead to disproportionately huge results. The characteristics of a complex system tell us very little that could help us in guessing what the system will do. We often observe novel behaviors on the scale of the entire systems, so-called emergent behaviors. Chaos theory. Many systems, including complex systems, can function in chaotic ways. This means that the behavior is essentially unpredictable in the long run, as to predict the behavior of such a system would require very fine measurement of the initial conditions and having an exact mathematical model describing the evolution of the system with respect to time. Neither is possible when we are talking about many interesting systems such as climate, ecological niches, or societies. The idea of self-invalidating predictions is a simple one, but deserves our attention. It just means that when you are making a prediction based on your current state, the prediction changes your state, so it becomes invalid. Essentially, you cannot accurately make good predictions about yourself, and any other complex system has this characteristic. Taking these and other concepts together, we can say that a society cannot predict its own behavior in the near future, and it cannot really control itself. Moreover, we too can't understand societies enough to steer them in the right direction. To quote the author, the development of societies will forever remain beyond rational human control. Technology will be shaped by power struggles. Technology is now being developed by powerful groups. Essentially, these are governments, corporations, organizations that can spend lots of resources, time, money, people in researching, testing, and perfecting various technologies. These groups, however, are in competition with each other. In the energy domain, groups that work on solar panels, coal and gas mining, wind turbines, nuclear power plants all compete against each other to stay in the market and rise above the others. The same is the case in other domains where technology is being developed. When there are power struggles, technology becomes a tool to win over the competition. Not the most beneficial technology is being developed, but the one that gives a strong competitive advantage over the other groups. Other concerns aren't really important. We will see more and more technology that serve power, not us. Self-propagating systems. Kaczynski introduces an interesting concept of a self-propagating system. He creates an analogy between the process of natural selection that we observe in biology and the similar form of selection that we can find in man-made systems. Political parties, corporations, governments, religious groups, generally groups of people with shared interests. Such systems are competing with each other, and the more powerful ones win over the less powerful ones. These groups, like their biological counterparts, for example animal species, self-propagate, that is, they grow by recruiting new members, buying out other companies, etc. A corporation is a good example. A corporation can live for hundreds of years, changing, growing, while people are hired and fired. These self-propagating systems grow larger and larger. The ones that do not grow are outcompeted by the ones that do. Short-term wins over long-term consequences. What's crucial are 2 points. First, a self-propagating system tries out and exploits every opportunity to gain more power. If it doesn't, the others will do that and they will outgrow it. Second, a self-propagating system is focused on short-term gains. When a few systems are concerned with long-term effects, such as climate change, but one of them is strictly focused on short-term gains, regardless of long-term consequences, it will gain major advantage over the others in the near future. This is enough to grow larger than those other ones. These points lead us to a conclusion that self-propagating systems will grow larger and larger and will be more and more ferocious with their use of natural resources, ignoring long-term consequences. Ultimately, the result will be the total collapse of the world, making it unsuitable for complex life. All systems, including ecological systems, civilizations, power grids, function within certain limits. Crops can't grow when there is not enough water, but also not when they are constantly submerged in water. Powerful self-propagating systems driven by short-term gains will inevitably push the ecological systems beyond their limits, essentially disrupting the environment beyond repair. Stability is very unlikely. We can think that maybe there is a chance that some fragments of the society that are particularly dangerous, extraction and use of fossil fuels, may indeed collapse, and that could solve at least some of the major problems with ongoing climate crisis. The thing is, societies we live in, with their economies, businesses, industries, factories, modes of transportation, computer systems, government organizations, are increasingly complex. They are subject to chaotic behavior, where slight alterations may lead to disproportionately large changes in the functioning of the whole system. The branches of societies are tightly coupled, meaning that a failure in one branch of a society can lead to cascading failures spreading across the entire society and even to other societies. Such was the case with the global financial crisis that started in 2008 in the United States and spread across much of the world. Knocking out or fixing such a harmful system would likely lead to unpredictable, disastrous consequences. An example of genetically modified organisms, GMOs, is interesting as it shows an attempt at fiddling with a complex system, not only the plant itself, but its ecological surroundings. The danger of genetic pollution, passing of the introduced genes to other species, is rarely raised, but the consequences are impossible to predict. In the area where genetically modified crops are growing, sometimes so-called superweeds emerge. From GM crops created superweed, say scientists in The Guardian. These are weeds that caught some of the genes from genetically modified crops and gained resistance to herbicides and abilities to survive harsh conditions. Even if we could eliminate a harmful self-propagating system and enjoy a relative stability, after some time new groups would pop out, gain power, exploit every loophole in the law, focus on short-term profits. They would quickly catch up to and overtake safer systems that, for example, use sustainable sources of energy. The stability would once again fall into disarray. And as we're in the topic of energy, we can never have enough energy. We use energy for everything, to produce and process food, for transportation, for research, production of commodities, communication, development of new technologies, maintenance, computer systems. The list could go on. We barely have enough energy sources. The system we rely on requires more. We observe skyrocketing developments in computing, with big tech giants the like of Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft and others getting bigger and bigger, their data centers housing tens of thousands of computers each also getting bigger and more numerous. They are extremely power hungry. They need electricity to run and they need electricity for cooling, so societies need more energy sources to accommodate this need for electricity. But when this need is met, the systems expand, grow to the limits of what is possible, and the cycle repeats. More energy sources have to be extracted, and they are swallowed by insatiable systems. The problem with green energy. There is one problem with energy. Green energy may be better in many respects than other sources, but it is not an ultimate answer to the problem of obtaining energy. Wind turbines pose two risks. First, they require rare earth metal called neodymium, which has to be extracted and, as other elements, is a limited resource. Second, wind turbines kill many birds that may destabilize the ecosystems by eliminating natural predators for pests. Harnessing solar energy requires vast spaces to be covered with solar panels. This puts the sourcing of energy with direct competition with smaller life forms that live closer to ground, even on the deserts or in the oceans. Why the current mass extinction is unique. Unlike in previous mass extinctions, where few factors drove the disasters, the current one is driven by self-propagating systems that will exploit each and every resource at an increasing pace and scope. Nothing will be left untouched. The systems that are operating currently and the systems that will come about in future are such that they use every possible resource there is. Mining of minerals and metals, extraction of petroleum and oil, extraction of natural gas, cutting timber, use of fresh water, etc. And the technologies that are being perfected allow for extraction of natural resources from places that were unavailable or unprofitable for use before, so the systems only continue to carve out more and more of what is left, all the while destroying the environment to get to these resources, poisoning fresh water and underground water reserves, eliminating animals and plant species and entire ecosystems, exacerbating the climate crisis. The destruction of the planet is being done using increasingly complex and sophisticated technologies that are being upgraded faster and faster, destroying the biosphere faster and faster. Did you ever wonder what is this economic growth that we often hear in the news? The headlines, China's economy grew 6%. What does this mean and why should we care? To grow the economy, China has to build more infrastructure, has to create more jobs, has to produce more commodities, has to provide more services, meaning China must extract more natural resources, must damage more of the environment, must worsen the problem with climate change. The economies of other countries grow with different rates. But one thing is clear when we observe that most countries do in fact grow with respect to economy. They are bigger than before, and they will likely be bigger in the near future than they are today. It translates to countries destroy the environment more than before, and in the future we can expect that they will destroy it even more than today. Countries do that because they are only concerned with short-term gains. If one country would focus too much on long-term sustainability, the other countries would overwhelm it, posing a grave risk to it in terms of technological competitiveness, job security, and even militarily. The destruction of the environment is getting faster and faster. The scope of this ruin is also getting larger and larger. So the current mass extinction is unique because the destruction is being done on many aspects of the environment, and this devastation is accelerating as it is being done by power-hungry, self-propagating systems. Humans are needed only as long as they serve the systems. Humans will be needed only insofar as they are useful to self-propagating system. When self-propagating systems gain an advantage by using humans or existing with symbiosis with them, the systems will take care of people. But once the costs of maintaining this dependence of humans are too high, or the humans are simply no longer useful to a self-propagating system, humans will simply not be a part of the decision-making process anymore. Currently, we see increasing automation in warehouses, factories, food production, and even attempts at automating transportation with self-driving cars. This clearly demonstrates that people are becoming increasingly replaced by machines and simply left useless. There is no need for machines to become very intelligent, let alone match or even surpass human intelligence in the general sense. The only thing that is needed for machines to replace humans is for machines to become better at particular things that are required for operation of some powerful self-propagating systems. The how. The second part of the book is concerned with the question how to dismantle the technological system. Large sections could be used by many radical movements in pushing their agenda or preparing for a revolution, but there is, of course, focus on destroying the technological system itself. Rules for radical movements. Author presents a set of 5 rules that should drastically improve the chances of success of any given radical movement that wants to carry out a revolution. Rule number 1. The movement should select a single, clear, concrete objective. Having a single, clearly stated objective makes it possible to focus on actually achieving it. Having a concrete goal allows the movement to stay on course. Rule number 2. The achievement of the goal must make the society virtually impossible to reverse to the previous way. After achieving the objective, there could arise organizations that would want to get back to the old scheme of the society. Therefore, the change must be almost impossible to reverse. Rule number 3. Recruit a committed minority of people to organize actual action. After selecting a goal, a group has to be formed that will not only preach but focus on taking steps to achieve the goal. Organizing people for action is harder than preaching of ideas because we are flooded with ideas. Rule number 4. A radical movement should devise means of excluding potential candidates that are unsuitable. Unsuitable members could derail, slow down, or otherwise impede the actions of the movement. Too many people with their own incompatible views may lead to the collapse of the movement. Rule number 5. A radical movement has to achieve the goal as soon as possible, otherwise it may risk becoming corrupt or changing its goals or falling apart. Power attracts opportunists who seek to join any organization for the position or power it gives them. The solution to the technological system. The fundamental source of contention in the world that is driving the world to ruin is the struggle between wild nature and the technological system. Therefore, the objective should be to kill the technological system, or at least make it defunct, impaired, by attacking communication networks, transportation systems, power grids, computer systems, etc. When looking through the perspective of the rules. Rule number 1, clear and precise objective, eliminate technological system. Rule number 2, change should be irreversible. Major destruction of the system or its part should make it impossible to resurrect the system for at least hundreds of years. Rule number 3, organize a movement for action. This part is elaborated on later. Rule number 4, exclude unsuitable people. Some means to do that would have to be found. Rule number 5, achieve goal fast before the movement becomes corrupt. Destruction is much faster than construction, so it should be possible. Thus, it should be possible to organize a radical movement to overthrow the technological system. Strategic guidelines. Strategic guidelines for the movement touch on various aspects of gaining power over alternative organizations, keeping the movement pure, committed to the cause, and many others. Reputation of the movement. The movement must earn for itself the reputation of being the purest, the most uncompromising, the one with a clear goal and something to show. This way, in a time of a major crisis, people will turn to this movement to fix the situation. Hardships and sacrifice. Even ordinary people can suffer through hardships when they believe that they are doing this for a noble cause. When a crisis hits. When a major crisis hits, people will lose all confidence in the current system. People will likely not defend the system. This poses an opportunity for the movement. Harnessing anger. Replacement of workers by automation may lead to apathy, passivity, hopelessness, and anger. Quote, skillful revolutionary leaders can harness people's anger and frustration and turn it to useful purposes. End quote. Win through commitment and organization. Tiny minority can prevail over a powerful majority by being committed, well organized, with clear goals, and by having an understanding of the dynamics of social movements. The minority can win with the initial power of their political, organizational, and planning skills. A pattern for an anti-tech revolution. A. The movement establishes structures in many countries. B. General population will not join to fear or apathy. C. When crisis arises, people are in disarray and angry, and revolutionaries will tap into this force. D. Most people will be motivated to only save themselves. E. Authorities will be in disarray, incapacitated. F. After bringing down the system in one country, the system will fail in others due to interdependence between countries, cascading failure. G. Revolutionaries have to seize the opportunity when it arises without hesitation. Avoid moral ambiguity. All the movement's actions have to be seen as justified. This can be done by ingraining the idea that the cause is a noble one. There cannot be any moral ambiguity, so that prompt action is unobstructed. The values and morality of the old system have to be discarded and replaced by morality and values of the revolutionary movement. Recruits to the movement will have to adopt these new values. The message of the movement should be directed not to the average man, but to people who are most likely to be receptive to the ideas of the movement. Respect over likability. Quote, A revolutionary organization should seek not to be liked, but to be respected, and it should have no aversion to being hated or feared." End quote. This way the movement is taken seriously. Practice organizational skills. Revolutionaries should practice leadership, propaganda, organizing by joining to other political groups, for example environmentalist movements, or through publication of a journal. Today that would include social media groups, podcasts, YouTube channels, etc. Unity in action. Criticisms and arguments are fine, but the organization must be totally united when it comes to action, after decisions have been made. This way the organization is flexible in thought and planning, and strong when it comes to action. Inspire through world-transforming goal. Quote, "It is a serious mistake to set modest goals for a revolutionary movement on the ground that such goals are realistic. Only a truly world-transforming goal can inspire people to accept hardship, risk and sacrifice, and to put forth the extreme effort that will be necessary for the success of any real revolutionary movement in the world today." End quote. Absolute commitment to the goal. Organization must be self-confident, absolutely determined, and believing that they can attain their ultimate goal, but they should be careful when it comes to individual steps, tasks, projects, for carelessness leads to failure. Serious defeats are not necessarily fatal. Even major defeats may be rebounded from, either by reorganization, determined continuation, and getting back lost power, or other means. Moreover, defeats often weed out weak members who were not fully committed to the cause. Argue to persuade third parties. Quote, "Seldom indeed will you succeed in persuading your opponents in an ideological dispute. Therefore, in any such dispute, your arguments should be designed not to persuade your opponents, but to influence undecided third parties who may hear or read the arguments." End quote. Recruit instead of arguing. Quote, "The way to prevail over rival radical groups is not to argue with them, but to outflank them. Focus on recruiting to your organization any suitable persons who are predisposed to reject modern technology, but are undecided among the various factions. Show that your organization is more active and effective than other radical groups. This will bring more people over to your viewpoint than any amount of argument will do." End quote. Stay within the law. Government will likely know a lot about the organization. The organization should be strictly legal for safety. Learn about newest technology. Organization must continually learn about the newest technology to know about spying techniques, crowds control, but also to have technological arsenal to fight the established power structure. Why human self-propagating systems are dangerous. Human self-propagating systems, such as organizations, business enterprises, etc., are especially dangerous because they are very intelligent and they are parts of the extremely powerful global self-propagating systems, multinational corporations, financial systems, etc. They can potentially disrupt the entire world. Human volition is a product of society. Most successful organizations mold the volition of their members to their needs. This way, the people are subservient to the organization. The organization itself has a competitive advantage over other organizations. The manipulation of people may be unintentional. No one in their organization may know all the ways in which the people are steered. Such processes emerge through the mechanisms analogous to evolution. People cannot simply choose to change this and collectively focus on saving the environment. As such processes are strong, many are unconscious and unknown. Therefore, we have little to no control over them. Why going after capitalism is a red herring? Yes, getting rid of capitalism would slow down the progress of technology and the destruction of nature. However, technological progress would still continue, only slower. The end result would still be the same. For example, Soviet Union was a very strong country technologically. Soviets put satellites into the Earth's orbit, sent a man to space, built nuclear power plants and nuclear weapons. Technology did progress, the environment had to pay the cost.